Most ghost stories end with fear. This one ended with a funeral. The Bell Witch is the only case in American history where a supernatural entity is credited in written records with killing a man. That detail alone is why the story refuses to fade. No matter how much time passes or how many explanations people try to force onto it, the land sits just outside Adams, Tennessee. Quiet farmland bordered by trees and limestone hills. It doesn't look dangerous. That's part of why the story still works. Nothing about the place warns you in advance. The disturbances began in 1817 on the Bell family farm. At first, the reports were minor. Knocking sounds on walls late at night, scratching along the floorboards, objects shifting slightly from where they'd been left. The kinds of things people explain away when they don't want trouble. But the activity didn't stop. It escalated. Neighbors were called to witness it. Ministers, skeptics, people who wanted proof. They all reported the same thing: sounds with no source, voices coming from empty rooms, and a presence that seemed aware of who was in the house and why. The voice identified itself as Kate. It spoke clearly. It answered questions. It mocked people by name. It showed a personality, intelligence, and memory. That detail matters because most ghost stories fall apart right there. This one didn't. Kate didn't just speak, she attacked. Witnesses described hair being pulled violently, faces slapped by invisible hands, skin pinched until bruises formed. These weren't isolated incidents. They happened repeatedly, in front of others, and always targeted the same person more than anyone else: John Bell. John Bell was a respected man in the community, not known for superstition or exaggeration. As the attacks continued, his health declined rapidly. He suffered seizures, lost the ability to speak for long periods, became partially paralyzed. Doctors at the time couldn't explain it. The voice made no attempt to hide what it was doing. "I will kill John Bell," it reportedly said. Multiple people heard it. That threat was documented. In 1820, John Bell died. A small vial containing a dark liquid was found near his bed. The family claimed the entity admitted to poisoning him. At his funeral, witnesses said the voice laughed and sang. That detail is why the story never softened with time. The haunting was said to end in 1821, but the land never went quiet. Over the years, people reported disturbances near the original property, especially around a limestone cave now known as the Bell Witch Cave. Fast forward to modern times. In 2025 and early 2026, visitors to the cave began reporting consistent issues: phones shutting off suddenly, batteries draining within minutes, flashlights failing only inside the cave, audio recordings capturing unexplained sounds. These weren't isolated complaints. They followed a pattern. I went to the site in early January 2026 after hearing about several of those reports. The cave sits low in a hillside, narrow at the entrance, wider once you move inside. Even during the day, light doesn't travel far in there. At night, it feels smaller. Just after 11 p.m., the property was empty. No tours, no staff. The surrounding fields were silent in a way that didn't feel natural. When I stepped near the entrance, the temperature felt uneven, like pockets of colder air existed without reason. Inside the cave, sound behaved strangely. Footsteps didn't echo properly. Voices sounded closer than they should have. The walls were damp and the ceiling felt lower the farther in you went. At 12 a.m., electronic devices began failing. Phones went black without warning. Flashlights flickered and dimmed. A backup light mounted near the entrance stayed on, but everything deeper inside lost power almost at the same time. That's when people report hearing it. Louder, not loud, not dramatic, measured. A woman's voice coming from deeper in the cave, where the path narrows and visibility drops. It doesn't shout. It doesn't whisper. It sounds like it's reacting to something amusing. When someone spoke, the laughter stopped. Then the voice answered, "Yes." No one had asked a question. The sound didn't echo. It didn't bounce off the walls. It felt placed, like it originated exactly where it needed to. People backed out immediately. Outside, devices powered back on within seconds. Full battery, no explanation. That wasn't the end of it. Visitors continued reporting physical sensations after leaving the cave: pressure on the chest, sudden headaches, nausea that faded once they drove away. In several cases, people discovered scratch marks on their backs or sides hours later. 3 lines, thin, red, and precise. No one saw who did it. Thermal scans conducted in 2025 showed something harder to dismiss: cold spots near the cave entrance that moved independently of airflow. The shapes appeared vaguely humanoid, shifting position when people moved, stopping when they stopped. Investigators tried to explain it away as moisture, temperature differentials, or equipment error. The problem was consistency. The shapes reacted to people. Local rangers don't like discussing it on record, but off the record, the tone changes. One of them said visitors tend to make the same mistake. They think it's history, he said. They don't realize it's interactive. That word stuck with me, interactive. On a later visit, just before, someone spoke inside the cave. Not loudly, not provocatively. Just a sentence directed at the space itself. I know what you did. The reaction was immediate. The air felt heavier, not colder, denser. The pressure made it harder to breathe comfortably, like the cave had tightened slightly around us. The laughter returned, closer this time. Then a voice followed it. You still talk, it said. He doesn't. No one stayed after that. Back outside, recordings captured more than anyone heard in the moment. Low sounds layered under breathing, faint whispers. And once, clearly, a woman's voice saying, I'm still here. That line appears in multiple recordings from different visitors across different years. The Bell Witch story survives because it doesn't behave like folklore. It adapts. Each generation adds new witnesses, new documentation, new incidents that don't align with coincidence. Fear fades. Patterns remain. Andrew Jackson is often mentioned in the story, long before he became president. According to accounts, he visited the Bell property and left after an invisible force reportedly struck his men and froze his horses in place. Jackson allegedly said he'd rather fight the British again than deal with what lived on that land. Whether exaggerated or not, the detail fits the pattern. The entity confronted people. It didn't hide. No one claims to have seen the ghost in room 115 clearly. People only realize something is wrong after something has been moved, a voice is heard in the shower, or a baby cries in a hallway where no one is standing. The Skirvin Hotel is one of the most recognizable buildings in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. It's old, restored, and expensive enough that guests expect silence at night and explanations when something goes wrong. The lobby is bright, the staff is professional, and nothing about the place suggests it should be remembered for fear. That's part of why the stories don't sit right. For years, the Skirvin's reputation as a haunted hotel floated around casually, something locals joked about, something tourists asked about during daytime tours. But in late 2025, the stories stopped sounding like folklore and started sounding like complaints, not from ghost hunters, from NBA players. Professional athletes are not known for superstition. Their schedules are tightly managed, their sleep is monitored, and their focus is treated like a resource. When multiple players from different teams began refusing to stay at the Skirvin, it raised quiet questions behind the scenes. The common detail wasn't nightmares, it was being woken up. Players described waking suddenly between midnight and 2 a.m., fully alert with the strong sense that someone else was in the room. No footsteps, no shadows, just presence. At first, they blamed travel fatigue, new environments, stress. But then objects started moving. Suitcases that had been placed neatly against the wall were found standing upright in the middle of the room. Phones unplugged from chargers and placed face down on the carpet. Bathroom lights turning off mid-shower. None of it violent, none of it accidental. Then came the sound. Guests staying on the 10th floor, especially near room 1015, began reporting a woman crying softly somewhere close by. Not loud enough to wake the whole floor. Not dramatic. Almost restrained, like someone trying not to be heard. Most people assumed it was another guest at first, someone upset, someone on the phone. That assumption usually ended when the sound behaved in a way it shouldn't. The crying didn't echo, it didn't fade with distance. It felt close no matter where you stood. Several guests reported opening their door to check the hallway, only for the crying to stop immediately. The moment the door closed, it started again, closer, as if it had moved. Some guests heard something else layered beneath the woman's voice, a baby. Short, repetitive cries that didn't change in pitch or rhythm, not screaming, not sobbing, just enough to be unmistakable. The story most people eventually hear involves a maid named Effie, believed to have worked at the Skirvin in the early 1900s. According to long-standing accounts, she became pregnant by the hotel owner and was hidden on the 10th floor to avoid scandal. Isolated and desperate, she allegedly jumped from a window with her infant. Hotel management avoids confirming details. Historians argue over records, but no one disputes where the activity concentrates. In room 115, that room generates more complaints than any other in the building. Guests report doors unlocking on their own, bathroom lights switching off when no one touches them, belongings moved while they sleep, a woman's voice heard softly through steam-filled bathrooms. One NBA player went on record describing how he heard a woman whispering from inside his bathroom while the shower wasn't running. When he opened the door, the room was empty. The mirror, however, was fogged, as if someone had been standing close to it moments earlier. Another player described waking up and finding his phone placed face down on the carpet, even though he was certain it had been charging on the nightstand. The security latch on the door was still locked from the inside. In late 2025, a short video appeared online and disappeared just as quickly. It showed a hotel bathroom door slamming shut by itself, hard enough to rattle the walls. The person filming could be heard backing away, breathing fast, saying they were done and leaving. Hotel staff later confirmed the room was on the 10th floor. Employees rarely speak openly about it, but longtime staff acknowledge the pattern quietly. The Skirvin Hotel was closed for nearly 20 years before it was restored and reopened. During that time, the building sat empty, dark, and deteriorating. Locals believe the renovation disturbed something that had been left alone too long. Maintenance workers often encounter the activity before guests do. One worker responded to a call just after 2 a.m. about a hallway light that wouldn't turn off. As he walked toward room 1015, he heard a baby crying behind him. When he turned around, the hallway was empty. The crying stopped the moment he reached the door. When he unlocked the room, the temperature dropped instantly, not gradually, but all at once, cold enough that he could see his breath. The room was empty. The light was off. He logged the incident and requested not to be assigned to the 10th floor alone again. Security logs from 2025 show repeated calls from the same section of the 10th floor between 12 a.m. and 3 a.m. Staff responses often read the same way. No issue found. Doors secured. Rooms quiet. Guests shaken but unharmed. That detail matters. No one reports being attacked. No one claims to see Effie clearly. The activity feels deliberate, controlled, like something wants attention, not confrontation. Guests who stay in room 1015 describe the same sensations. The feeling of being watched from the bathroom doorway. The sense that someone is standing near the window, waking up to find blankets pulled tighter around them, as if someone adjusted them while they slept. The crying always stops before morning. Hotel management never officially confirms a haunting, but they don't deny the stories either. They emphasize the building's age and history, and quietly, they allow professional sports teams to stay elsewhere. That decision says more than any statement. Guests still book room 1015. Most aren't told its reputation. Many ask for a room change after the first night. Those who stay longer say the sound changes. The crying grows closer, more insistent. Some claim the baby's cries don't sound human, that the pauses between breaths feel wrong, or that the pitch never varies. One guest reported the crying turning into soft laughter for a few seconds before stopping completely. No one ever finds anyone in the hallway. Effie's name continues to surface in guest reviews, staff conversations, and deleted posts. No one describes her face, only reflections that don't match movement, shadows that linger too long, mirrors that fog without heat. After midnight, the 10th floor feels different, quieter, heavier, like the building itself is listening. People who work overnight know which hallways to avoid. They know which rooms generate calls. They know not to linger outside room 115 once the lights dim, because the sound isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to see how you respond. The Skirvin Hotel remains open, busy, and respected. By day, it feels like any other historic hotel. By night, especially on the 10th floor, it feels like something unfinished is still waiting. And once you realize no one ever sees her directly, only the effects she leaves behind, it becomes harder to ignore what's happening. If you heard crying outside your hotel door after midnight, would you open it or stay inside? Visitors hear heavy footsteps above them in the Whaley house. But the moment someone climbs the stairs to check, the sound stops and starts again when they leave. The Whaley house sits in Old Town San Diego, California, surrounded by restaurants, souvenir shops, and tourists who treat the area like a historical theme park. During the day, it's loud and bright. At night, when the tours thin out and the streets quiet down, the house feels exposed in a way that's hard to explain. The building looks solid, ordinary, like any other preserved 19th century home. That's what makes the stories harder to dismiss. The Whaley house wasn't just built in the 1850s. It was built on top of something. Before Thomas Whaley ever laid a foundation, the land served as San Diego's public gallows. Executions happened there in full view of the town. People gathered. Sentences were carried out where families would later live. One of those executions belonged to James Yankee Jim Robinson. Yankee Jim was convicted of stealing a boat. The crime itself wasn't unusual for the time. The execution was. Accounts from the era describe the hanging as botched. The rope was too long. He didn't die quickly. He struggled for several minutes before finally going still. Locals say the ground never forgot that. When Thomas Whaley built his house on the site years later, people warned him. He ignored them. The house went up anyway, brick by brick, sealing the gallows beneath the floorboards. The first strange incidents were reported not long after the family moved in. Footsteps, cold spots, sounds that didn't match the layout of the house. Over time, tragedy followed the Whaley family themselves. Illness, loss, and death, until the house gained a reputation that outlived them. Fast forward to January 2026, and the Whaley house is officially a museum. Tours run nightly. Digital recorders are common. Motion sensors, temperature monitors, and security cameras are standard. And still, the reports continue. The most common complaint from visitors isn't visual, it's auditory. People standing on the ground floor hear heavy footsteps above them. Slow, uneven, deliberate, not pacing, not wandering, just moving enough to be noticed. When guests ask tour guides about it, they're told the upper floor is empty. Some guests don't believe that and decide to check for themselves. That's when the pattern becomes clear. The moment someone places a foot on the staircase, the sound stops. Not fades, not moves away, stops completely. People describe standing halfway up the stairs in total silence, listening, waiting. The house feels empty in a way that feels wrong, like something is holding its breath. When they return to the ground floor, the footsteps resume, always overhead, always just out of reach. In early 2026, a staff member working the evening shift reported hearing the footsteps while locking up the downstairs rooms. Assuming another employee was still upstairs, they called out. No response. They climbed the stairs. Silence. They checked every room. Empty. The moment they returned downstairs, the footsteps started again. That same staff member later admitted the sound didn't feel like normal walking. It felt weighted, as if the person making it couldn't lift their feet properly. Other visitors describe an additional sound layered into the footsteps. A faint creaking. Subtle. Rhythmic. Like pressure shifting. Like something pulling downward. That detail shows up again and again in recordings. Digital recorders placed upstairs often capture sounds no one hears in real time. Slow breaths, short, strained exhales, a low creak that rises and falls slightly, as if something is under tension. One investigator reviewing audio from a January 26 overnight session noticed the pattern only after listening back with headphones. The sound didn't resemble floorboards. It resembled something suspended. The Whaley house isn't home to just one reported presence. Visitors frequently smell fresh cigar smoke in rooms where smoking hasn't been allowed for decades. Others report the sudden scent of French perfume, light but unmistakable. These smells appear without warning and vanish just as suddenly. They're often attributed to Thomas Whaley and his wife Anna, but the footsteps belong to someone else. Yankee Jim is described as the most aggressive spirit associated with the house. Not violent in a traditional sense, but insistent. He announces himself through sound rather than sight. People rarely claim to see him clearly. Instead, they hear him. One tour guide in early 2026 paused mid-sentence when the footsteps began above her. The group stood quietly, listening. When someone laughed nervously, the sound grew louder. One heavy step followed by another. The guide led the group upstairs. Silence. They returned downstairs. The footsteps resumed immediately. Several guests left the tour early that night. The Whaley house has been investigated countless times over the years. Skeptics argue that old houses make noise. Believers counter that old houses don't react, because that's the detail that keeps surfacing. The sound responds. It stops when approached. It resumes when ignored. It moves when attention shifts. Another recurring report involves a phantom dog, often described as a spotted terrier, seen running through the garden or darting across rooms. When visitors point it out, staff explain there is no dog on the property. The figure disappears before anyone can follow it. Security footage from early 2026 captured motion alerts in empty rooms upstairs without showing any visible cause. Doors remained closed. Temperature readings fluctuated briefly, then stabilized. Nothing dramatic, just enough to register. The Whaley house holds a unique distinction. In the 1960s, the U.S. Commerce Department referred to it as haunted, making it one of the few sites in the country ever acknowledged that way by a government body. Officials have since avoided repeating the wording, but the record remains. Nightly ghost tours continue, but guides are trained to move along when something unusual happens. They've learned that lingering makes things worse. Several guides quietly admit they avoid certain areas after dark, especially the upstairs rooms directly above the old gallows site. Not because they've seen something, because they've heard it. Visitors who stay long enough report a feeling of pressure in the air, like standing too close to something heavy. Others say they feel a tugging sensation in their chest, brief and sudden, as if something pulled downward and let go. No one reports being touched. No one reports being harmed. That's part of what makes it unsettling. The activity feels unfinished, not malicious, as if something is still replaying its final moments. The Whaley House doesn't rely on shadows or sudden scares. It doesn't need them. The house lets the past leak through slowly, through sound and sensation, until visitors start questioning what they're hearing. Because when footsteps stop the moment you try to find them, it forces a question. Are you being avoided? Or are you being controlled? People leave the Whaley House quieter than they arrived, not laughing, not excited, just thoughtful. Because once you hear something that responds to your presence, it becomes harder to dismiss it as coincidence. And once you realize the sound doesn't walk freely, that it hesitates, drags, and strains, it's difficult not to imagine what's being replayed upstairs every night. Something heavy, something suspended, something that never quite stopped. If footsteps stopped whenever you checked upstairs, would you keep investigating or leave immediately?